Hey listeners, I'm Zach Slater, and this is Let Me Know How It Is. Today the panel explores which they prefer better, real-world settings or fictional locations. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. I went to Noir Fest, saw Double Indemnity for, I think it was the first time I saw it in the theater, but I could be wrong. I could be missing it. But I saw Pushover. There's another Fred McMurray noir. It was like Kim Novak's first film. Mm-hmm. And I was really excited to see this because I'd seen this one before. And I remember liking it, but it's such a little known one that this was probably my only chance to ever see it in the movie theater. Right. So it was neat to, it's an awesome act too. Okay. Like just as far as planning out who's where in this, because it's like in an apartment building and they're staking out. Mm-hmm. So it's like just the blocking of it is like, wow, like it's really, really well done. And it's kind of the meat of the movie is that, because the premise is sort of on shaky ground a little bit, but it's a good one though. It's a good, it's a B, but yeah. But like I said, I didn't get to meet Eddie Muller, but hopefully next year when Noir City comes back. Speaking of, so today we're going to talk about fictional cities versus real-world locations and the drawbacks and benefits of doing each and what we prefer. So with that, I'm Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
This is Tommy Smithereens.
I'm Clifton.
And so let's start.
Well, as far as my perspective goes, I would like it to be mostly fictional because when dealing with real cities, I feel like there's the need to include real-time events or real things that occurred. And I think it pulls away from the story of what someone might try to create, in my opinion, at least. And for me, I have an issue with that because it forces the real time of the character. I mean, I think it takes away from the longevity of certain stories. Like, for example, when... to
use a real location.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like when 9/11 hit. In Marvel stores, it was more forced in because they use, New York as their main base of action or what most of the heroes deal with, as opposed to there's no Twin Towers in Gotham or Metropolis. Right. So if they wanted to include that in their story, they would make a trip to New York and deal with the problem, but by choice, as opposed to how do you ignore that if a real city is being used as a location and with fictional characters. So, I mean, I get it, but I just think it brings it into real-time events and real things that occur, as opposed to having a fictional city in which you can include all the elements of cities when you choose, like, hell, Gotham. Gotham has a harbor. Gotham has a, Gotham can be Chicago. Gotham can be Baltimore. Gotham can be New York, all at the same time, based upon how you want to tell the story. So, I mean, I just prefer the fictional city just because you can create whatever you need to do with that fictional character. It's such a setting that helps with the storyline. I mean, hell, Gotham is older than the country itself. In some cases, right. It breeds all type of architecture from God knows from all parts of the world. If it wants to be, Art Deco or what was it in the animated series? What kind of look was that?
Yeah, no, it's Art Deco.
Yeah. And then there's Tim Burton. Is it still Art Deco? Tim Burton?
Yeah,
I thought it was more gothic in Tim Burton.
Well, you had a lot of that stuff that was like there was a point where they did take the designs from '89 with, was it Anton Furst? Is that the guy that did most of the set design for the '89 Batman? And at one point, they actually were in the comics. They made a big deal about the fact, like, hey, we're switching over to this. And for a while, that was like the look of Gotham that was supposed to mirror what was going on or had gone on in the '89 movie.
Okay.
I think, so for me, not surprising because I'm a Batman fan, but I think Gotham is the most successful fictional location out there. I think just for that reason that it's one of the only ones that I can think of that can support multiple visions of itself. You do have the animated series version that's got kind of this strong visual, and then the Anton Furst stuff, and then there's the Schumacher version and everything.
I can't stand the Schumacher.
Which I like it. I really like the neon and stuff and all the weird statues. I like it. I think I don't.
It turns into an erotic Las Vegas.
But that's what I like about it is that the idea is flexible enough that it can handle all of those things, and that does that work with Batman Begins? No, absolutely not. But like for that version that they wanted to do, that was gaudy and campy and over the top, like it fits nicely.
You mean
I
like,
think.
Does that include like the Batman 66 stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I think it takes away from the ever change. I mean, I prefer Metropolis because Metropolis does it as what the city of tomorrow. It doesn't emphasize that look and that darkness of it, but it has all those elements that Gotham has. It's just, I think it's more static in its presentation. Tall high rises, metro, oversea metro rails, but it does have its slums. It does have a harbor, but it doesn't take away from the majestic of the city, as opposed to Gotham, which is only told only by the art direction of the movie or the show or whatever is prevalent for that time.
I mean, I think the character also lends a little bit of the slant which way it goes. So I was thinking about it. Like Batman is he does go outside of Gotham, but typically most of the stories you're going to see are in Gotham and street level and stuff like that. Even if you're not reading like 70s stuff where he's fighting a crook with a wrench or something like that. Like his bad guys are all, low power and street level and stuff like that. And so it makes sense to me that the city is the way that it is like that. And then, like, I think it follows the character a little bit. And then Superman, who it's not uncommon to see him outside of Metropolis because he has way more of a sci-fi bent. And so I think it's cool that Metropolis kind of mirrors that a little bit. And it is the city of tomorrow, and it is optimistic like what Superman is. And it is like a science like hub with Star Labs and all that stuff. So I think that that's kind of a neat aspect to it. For me to go like fictional or real, like it depends what you want to do. I think that they both have strong benefits.
What do you think of the aspect of Zeppelins in Gotham? I mean, it's cool looking, but it's almost weird to me because it's almost why not helicopters?
Yeah, but they have helicopters too.
Did they?
Those?
It felt like all they can afford is Zeppelins.
There's also helicopters in the opening of the animated series.
Yeah.
Is it? You're right. There's a helipad. Yeah.
Remember that one where he's blind also, and he's got like the one that Penguin hijacks?
Yeah.
So if Metropolis is the city of tomorrow, Gotham is sort of the city of yesterday.
Okay.
It's the city that had its time. And I think it is how it's played a lot. That's where it is the Art Deco. Like it's still stuck in the Art Deco aesthetic where Metropolis plays to more of a contemporary to future aesthetic. Okay. It's also why the Zeppelins are kind of in there. Like it's Gotham's past was in its heyday, and it's Batman trying to
bring it back to us.
Bring it back.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
And it's interesting because now you'll see in a lot of the media, I can think of several shows, Brave and the Bold, then Titans, Batwoman, and even the superhero girls. Like they play Gotham so over the top, like dirty and crime infested.
Yeah.
Well, there is that funny scene that's in that Brave and the Bold episode where Aquaman and Mary and Arthur Jr. are in Gotham, and it's you hear the gunshots in the distance, and he's Aquaman, and he's like, you better like lock the doors, roll out the windows.
Yeah, it's played that way in the current DC Superhero Girls show from Lauren Faust, where it takes place in Metropolis, but Batgirl went back to Gotham to visit a friend, and it's just like everything is dirty and graffiti and brown, and it's fun. Like it's a fun angle to play with it too.
One of the interesting angles I thought of too, this was like right when Morrison was jumping on Batman, and there was like a Wizard interview with him and Dini, who was doing Detective at the same time. They were like launching the same month or something. And in that interview, Morrison talks about like having gone to Vegas for the first time, and he was like looking around, and he's like, oh, like I had an image of what Gotham was until I went to Vegas, and I went, no, this is what happens when crime takes over a city.
Right.
It's not run down, it's this.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I think it's kind of interesting, the idea that up to a point, I understand the idea of setting up Gotham as if, like in Batman, it makes sense that the city's run down because Batman's supposed to be gone or missing or whatever, that the city would fall into ruin because no one is maintaining it from, like, no one's there to be the watcher on the wall, basically, sort of thing of like, I'm going to be the person that stops, the Joker or whoever from doing big time crime. But it's kind of funny to me sometimes when we see that it's an established Gotham City and still it's thought of as being dirty and run down, and because we see lots of scenes of Batman obviously doing superhero stuff, but there's constant stories about Bruce Wayne being philanthropic and giving money to this shelter or this part of town or doing this. So I would think at some point, I mean, granted, much like Superman, it's a never-ending, it's a never-ending quest to do this. But I'd like to think at some point he's starting to reclaim some of the city.
Sure. Yeah, I like to think that Gotham probably has its nice spots.
Yeah.
Too, like around the waterfront and everything, where the real estate's a little bit more expensive. And
sure.
Gotham's got a lot of rich people.
Yeah,
as we see in all the stories too.
So like it has more than any other city.
Yeah.
There's a lot of black tie affairs in Gotham. Otherwise, how is Bruce Wayne going to leave?
Oh my God!
Or pretend that he's not paying attention, or he's drunk.
Oh, the Iceberg Lounge, man.
Yeah, he's always throwing. He's always throwing those "I'm the richest man in the universe" parties.
Right, always.
Yeah, there's always something like that. So, like Tommy hinted at this, and this is what I think is the real benefit to doing a fictional city is that Gotham can be anything, right? I love this idea that like if you drive far enough to the east, you hit the beach and the riverfront and bridges and everything, and you go far enough to the northwest and you hit the mountains, and you go far enough south and then there's a suburb, right? And it houses every single possible location that you would want to have.
Yes.
And whereas I think that's the drawback for Marvel is that like if you're doing New York, like you're a little bit right. You got to have this conversation of like the X-Men are up in like where Salem
Center, Westchester County.
Right. So how far away is that from Manhattan when there's a set piece in there and stuff? When they're teaming up with Daredevil and Hell's Kitchen or something like that. Like these are questions that you don't have reading something with a fictional city.
Well, no, I agree with you to a point. The idea that Gotham, it's got something for everyone, basically, that you can find, there's all sorts of stories that you can do. It lends itself. But then there's also the problem with the fictional city where, and I think that the show Smallville did this poorly, and they've sort of adopted it into the comics, is at one point, Smallville is Smallville, Kansas, and Metropolis is, might be New York. It might be Chicago. It might be a city that's far, far away. And then...
Well, I think initially Smallville was upstate New York, like in the 1930s.
Okay.
Because there was a lot of farmland up there. And then Metropolis was New York City, New York. And it was, back in the 30s, a pretty significant jump to go from a small town in upstate New York to the big city. And then when our farming moved more to the Midwest, being dominant, then Smallville moved to Kansas. And Metropolis stayed New York. And then I think what Frank is saying is that like Smallville moved, then Metropolis also to the middle along with Smallville.
Yeah, it'd be like having having a major city with skyscrapers and everything suddenly appear in in Kansas. And if you've ever been through Kansas or ever driven through Kansas, that's not really the case.
Right. But it's a fictional town.
True.
I'm not defending it because that is one of the things that I really resented about Smallville. And this is why I say I think Gotham is the most fleshed out of all these. One, because I think that there's been so many good writers that have gone on Batman that there's any number of fantastic stories of Batman, whereas like Superman, I think, does not have quite as many of like those pinnacle books. But I'm getting kind of sidetracked. But anyway, but what I'm saying is that Gotham is pretty much unanimously agreed that it's somewhere in like the American Northeast someplace, right? Yeah. Like it's not actually New York, right? Yeah. Because New York exists in the DC universe, but it's like another town that's likened to New York, and it's kind of in that range. Whereas like Metropolis has always kind of doesn't really have a fast location that it's agreed upon. So like in Smallville, like it is in Kansas, which never made sense to me because the idea for me was that Superman, Clark picks up and moves. Sure. And that's a big deal.
Right.
And Lois calling him Smallville doesn't make sense to me if it's not a big distance from the go. Right?
Exactly.
But then you got like the Dawn of Justice version where like Metropolis and Gotham are like Twin Cities and stuff, which that never worked for me really either. No, but because that opens the door of like,
but
why isn't Superman just flying over the bridge to fight the Joker?
Right.
Yeah, but Twin Cities doesn't necessarily mean they're in a relatable location. Like we don't say that is like Schifferstadt is the Twin City for Frederick. Schifferstadt's in Germany.
Right.
So I was like.
But in this version, it was like they're literally across the river from each other.
Really?
It's like Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yeah.
or Kansas City,
or Kansas City, Kansas,
Right.
and Kansas City,
All
Missouri.
right, well, that was my only argument.
Well, no, I mean, wait, but I think what you're saying is, as opposed to being a twin city, isn't it like a sister city? Isn't that the difference? It's one's like it's supposed to be because again, like in the comics, at one point when you had Earth 1 and Earth 2 before the crisis, back in '86, you had Keystone obviously being on Earth 2, and Earth 1 was Central City for the Flash. Well, at one point, when after the post-crisis, when the world is merged into one world, Keystone City sits across the bridge from Central City. So again,
It's a sister cities or twin cities?
that'd be twin cities at that point.
Okay, but
that was one that I like because I like the idea that the Flash is so fast he can cover 2 cities.
Right, but
you know what I mean?
Right, right. But it wasn't. It was. I mean, basically, the idea was that you had you had Jay and Keystone, and then you had Barry in Central City. So to me, it's. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I don't have an issue with it because obviously they had to figure something out. So I wanted to make a fist and be like, well, this is how it is now because otherwise we have to constantly explain why there was no longer an Earth 2. Go see Crisis on Infinite Earths. But yeah, I mean, I have a bigger problem with the idea of Metropolis and Gotham being across a river. I agree with you. Why wouldn't he fly over and take care of things?
Yeah.
That makes no sense. But then that gets to the bigger idea of like, well, if they're going to shut down all of Gotham during Cataclysm or Contagion, why wouldn't the Justice League show up to help out?
Yeah.
And there's always some convoluted reason as to why not.
And if Batman took place in New York, I don't think Cataclysm works, right?
No, I don't.
Because you can't say that a 7.8 earthquake hit New York City, but a fictional city,
you can.
You can. Okay, it just happens from time to time.
But I mean, my question. Then the question becomes: could you? Okay, so if we're saying that Gotham is a better, if we're shifting over to the idea that Gotham is a better, quote unquote, fictional city than Metropolis, then could you do? Then the question becomes: could you do No Man's Land in New York?
I mean, it depends what you're trying to do. So I think, to me, the benefit is nobody's ever read a Batman comic and said they got that location wrong. Right? Because it's not real.
Well, up until a point, because the other thing about Gotham and the Batman writers as a group, that's the first place I started to notice the idea of, oh, that's down by the Spring River, or that's O'Neill Avenue, or whatever.
That's Tricorner. That's the Narrows. Right.
That's where they started. But what I'm saying is they started to name stuff after creators, and ever since then, like Metropolis has some of that. Metropolis has some of that too. But I think Gotham, like as a city, adopted more of an idea of like this is where things are geographically. So I think there is an instance where you could say something and get it wrong, because I think much the same way that if I said Hobbs Bay, or Stryker's Island in Metropolis, those are said. I imagine somewhere there's. I mean, I know there's Atlas for the cities in DC. There was one back like when they were doing the tabletop games, that there was an atlas you could get that would actually lay out the fictional cities. Whether they still use it or not, who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen those, but it's also like, but I mean, what I'm saying though is I'm talking like the Death of Gwen Stacy stuff, where it's like they say it's the George Washington Bridge, but they draw the Brooklyn Bridge, right? So if you live in New York, which I know that's been fixed in trades and stuff like that, but if you live in New York, that's something that maybe not everybody in the country is going to know. Right. But at the very least, if you live there, you're like, okay, they got that wrong.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because it's one of those things where if you don't grow up in New York or you don't visit New York, I mean, yes, that in the harbor there's the Statue of Liberty, right?
Sure.
But that's relative to what? Like that doesn't, what I'm saying, to me, growing up and reading Marvel comics, and there was, and even now sometimes, because I haven't visited all of New York, there are still times that I go, well, I don't know if I stop to think about it, I have no idea if it's accurate or not. I have no idea if Forest Hills, where is that Queens?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where
Central Queens,
where Peter Parker's supposed to be from. Right. That could have been a fictional city to me, because I had no clue whether or not it was actually accurate or not accurate. I mean, just row houses. That's all I knew it was.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I think, it's kind of like when you see in a movie where they talk about, like, for the longest time you could tell that the X-Files wasn't clearly in Virginia or DC. It was in British Columbia, right?
Yeah.
Same sort of thing where, like, if you didn't know better, you didn't live in the area, I don't think you would recognize the difference between New York or another fictional city. I think that's one of the things about Marvel, that when we start to get bogged down in like fictional versus nonfiction, I go, well, again, if you don't know, like you said, the bridge, no one would, I mean, who would have known unless you live in New York? Well, that's clearly not that landmark.
Right. Yeah. But I think that's both like a benefit and a drawback, right? Because you do open yourself up to those kind of scrutiny of like, well, that building's really not over there by this building, but at the same time, like, so my cousin is from New York and everything. I remember when he used to come down every summer, he used to want to watch New York Undercover, not because we were a fan of the show, but because he wanted to see the neighborhoods that they were in. Like, oh, I remember that. Like that's so-and-so deli and stuff like that. And so I do think that there is an excitement that you get to, if you've been there, to having something take place.
Sure.
Where,
I can see that.
Yeah, but adding to that, that's, I think, the benefit of using the real city would probably lay in the fact that it's a relatability to its fans or the neighboring. But I understand what Frank is saying. Like, if I'm not from there, I don't care about that. But it gives them a sense of, ooh, New York is cool. Is that how it really would be? You know, they chase rooftops. Is that how New York is laid out? It romanticizes the city without actually having to be there. So I guess that's I won't say a drawback, but I guess a feather in the cap of using the real city. And then also it gets to hide behind the fact that it's fake because it's using fake characters like Freedom Sport Plaza. You know, where the hell would they put that in New York? Well, you know, which building did they take out in order to erect that, you know, into that geography of New York, you know?
There's fictional aspects, like the Baxter building's not a real place.
It's not real.
And stuff,
Well, I lived in New York for years. But even before I lived in New York, like, I loved the Marvel comics that were set in New York. They felt authentic because they were made by people who grew up in those places, who knew those places. The Marvel headquarters was right in Midtown, I believe. So, they're picking places they know, and it did lend an authenticity to it. I thought that even as a young kid reading, I just kind of felt, even if I didn't know that's exactly what I was feeling, where I would think like that would be cool to see this place, even though I know, the Avengers Mansion isn't really there, but I know what's around it really is there. And then when I lived up there, I went to school in the Village and would walk down Bleecker Street, knowing that that's where the Sanctum Sanctorum, Doctor Strange's house, is fictionally, but it was just cool. I know it's not really there, obviously, but it was just cool, walking down the street being like, oh, this is where those stories were set.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me. It's not so much in the comics, again, because if you don't have for me personally, if I didn't have a frame of reference for some of that stuff, I wouldn't know. But seeing the Flatiron Building in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, that's the one that's where they put the Daily Bugle, right?
Yeah.
In the Sam Raimi movies.
Right.
It's a strange choice, I always thought. But anyway.
Really?
It looks cool. But the other thing...
it's such an iconic building that it just to make that be it, I thought was so strange. But
to getting back to what you said, and more like what you said was the idea, Tommy and Clifton, was the idea that going around those places, those landmarks, and thinking, well, this is where this would have taken place is cool. But it's more so for me, I had that feeling when I was playing the Spider-Man, the PS4 game.
Yeah.
And how well they recreate
New
York. And you can see, well, this is Avengers Mansion here. Or you can go to the Sanctum Sanctorum. You don't interact with Doctor Strange, but you can definitely see the big, the symbol in the window and all that stuff at the top. And they did a really good job with that, of when you're just swinging around in the physics and looking around the city, it's a real breathing city, right? Wouldn't you say?
No, definitely. But it's interesting that you bring up video games, because then Arkham Knight, when they introduced the Batmobile, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That felt like a breathing city because of the layouts of the streets and how they did it. And then I remember when Zach was talking about how he went to Chicago, it felt like Gotham. How Gotham and Chicago are layered, I didn't think a city could be layered like that till I went to Chicago. It's weird, but Spider-Man City for the PS4 was, I'd already say, more engaging than Gotham in Arkham Knight.
Yeah,
sure. I could see that, because I assume that they probably actually use real models of maps and models of New York, which is interesting. It's a really quick tangent. Because Notre Dame Cathedral caught fire a few months back. And one of the things I remember reading about was there was a designer who was working on the Assassin's Creed video game at the time, and she had spent so many years studying the layout of Paris and stuff like that. And as a result, Notre Dame was so authentically recreated in that game that they're actually using bits of the game to help with the repairs.
I can see that.
Wow.
Yeah,
I can see that. Sure.
Yeah. I just thought that was an interesting.
Oh no,
take.
That's very cool. Yeah, it's that. Like I said, for me, it was one of those things where, and I agree. Gotham does feel real, but I don't feel it's not as grimy as some of the as some of the other depictions of it. Whereas again, New York in the Spider-Man, the PS4 game, definitely feels like it's lived in, and it's got the locations matter and all that stuff.
Well, I think like an important thing for me for like a fictional city to feel real is the relationship of locations in space, right? So one of the best examples I can think of, so like Gotham, I do feel like feels like a real place at times, depending on which version you're looking at. But Legend of Korra, like Republic City, I actually thought that really felt like a real place to me. And so there's an episode where they're trying to track down like an equalist rally or something like that, and there's a moment where they're tracking down like these flyers, and they're seeing that once you put all these flyers together, essentially, that it tells you the location of what this rally is. And it felt so much like, okay, like the rally's in Midtown and they're on 12th Street.
Right.
You know?
I can see it, yeah.
And I think things like that really help out, which is, again, I think why Gotham tends to feel a little bit more like this than some of the other spots, is that they tend to be detective stories and details of streets and where you're at. And I think this is why, like, so many creators get immortalized as having bridges and parks named after them in Gotham, because like you need to put a name on something.
Right.
Right.
Well, I mean, here's a question though. Do we think that it's, of all the fictionalized cities, is it basically Gotham and Metropolis and then everything else? Or is there any other cities that we think of as fictional cities in comics that come close to being as real, quote unquote, as Gotham and Metropolis?
Or even as iconic. Like,
Sure.
Is there anything in another fictional city that you could pin down, like Star City?
Right.
And be like, this is what makes Star City,
Right.
like we do with Metropolis or Gotham? Or do they just kind of become default fill in the blank cities?
Yes, we just know that Green Arrow is that's where he does most of his work. So,
I mean, my thing, like, I always kind of attach an analog, like, weirdly, like an actual city that I think is kind of more or less where they're going. Like, so Coast City to me was always San Diego. Likened it to it, where it was a beach town, everything had an army base out there.
right.
You know, and I thought and so Metropolis to me was always San Francisco.
Okay.
Like bright, optimistic, tall buildings, you know, far from Gotham.
Sure.
You know, not necessarily saying that Metropolis was always on the West Coast for me, but it was just like, that was the analog that I thought. Because San Francisco just seems bright, and it also has like tech out there and everything like that. I'm trying to think of other like non-DC related fictional cities that maybe we can pull from like movies.
Non-DC?
Yeah.
We go with Marvel being normally or realistic places, DC normally fictional places, but Marvel has some good fictional places that fit the bill, and one I think of is Metropolis, which is a very fun one. It's sort of a hybrid, I think, between like Shanghai, Hong Kong, Macau, you know, an island coastal city on the China Sea, but they've never pinned down exactly where it is, but you can, like, it's got a flavor of its own. We know what to expect there.
Yeah, I
what
love
types of stories they tell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I hope they use it in the MCU somewhere. I really do. I really. Oh man, that's a good one.
The only way they're using that is with X-Men.
Well, they're bringing them in. So
yeah. So I'm trying to.
But we also have Shang-Chi coming.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about.
I was gonna say Iron Man had a story in there too, but we know what happens to him.
Yeah, but no, I mean it's. I think we're so used to Marvel using realistic locales that we tend to forget. But I was tend to thinking of with another DC location, Milestone with Dakota City. Yeah,
sure.
That one was based solely on the location and how they developed their characters and pushed forward with what they were using. Like certain locations within Dakota City were vastly different, and you see different characters evolve from that and didn't interact with it. It almost felt like Marvel's version of New York City, in which Hell's Kitchen is Daredevil's area. Right, It just the location of stuff was just kind of immense and small all at the same time.
Yeah, it always struck me as funny once you divided New York up as its neighborhoods, and you were like, oh, like Daredevil covers like only these couple of streets, and then the Fantastic Four are up here, and like
Luke Cage is in Harlem.
Yeah. So, but I do think that not all fictional cities are created equally, and there are some that do run like sort of just generic and like Hub City in DC and something like. I don't know what that's supposed to.
Who's even in Hub City?
The question.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
That was Hub City?
Yeah.
And Opal City, which was supposed to be in Maryland, was
I loved
Starman. I remember.
Yeah.
But
Opal's a fairly fleshed out city, but it's not as, obviously there hasn't been as many stories about Opal City as
it's fleshed out in a run. It's fleshed out in a specific run, right?
Robinson does a good job in fleshing that out, but it's not anywhere near as Gotham or Metropolis.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing with Fawcett City when they were doing like Power of Shazam with Ordway, or we doing the art, that they wanted to give, that kind of 40s flavor that they had for those books with the architecture and stuff. They use a lot of that, but again, it's not the same thing as Metropolis or Gotham.
So Fawcett City is interesting because I was actually thinking of the Shazam movie, which doesn't use Fawcett City; it just uses Philadelphia. And I think that it may be a little bit more beneficial.
Okay,
I think it does work. I don't know. There was something refreshing about it being in a city that wasn't like LA, not New York, not like, you know what I mean? I do think that maybe the fictional city is a little bit harder to do in live action than it is in animation, or maybe even in the comic books. But I thought that was really refreshing and cool.
I still haven't seen it yet, so I don't know.
It was a very dirty Philadelphia.
Yeah,
it looks very dirty.
Well, okay.
And I don't know if they filmed it there, but I do think that sometimes you get like things for free,
right?
Than having to do like on a soundstage or something,
right.
Like name dropping or use of the city allows the tax benefits, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you get a lot instead of having to build it all up whole cloth.
You get a lived-in city.
You get a lived-in city
ready for camera.
I did do a tour of the Warner Brothers backlot once when I was in LA, and it does kind of ruin movies for you for a little while because you start to recognize it, and you're like I saw a shot. I was like Expendables 2. I saw Expendables 2 use the same part of the backlot in almost 2 consecutive shots, but they were different places. And I'm like, it's the same spot,
right?
Like, so it does kind of ruin it for that reason.
That's the central perk,
right?
It's Expendables,
exactly,
because it's that street. They only have like 3 streets on that backlot, and one of them is the central perk.
Wow!
But what I like about when a fictional city works, the benefit that I think is beyond somebody living in New York that can appreciate like Spider-Man and Daredevil and stuff like that. What I like about it is sometimes if it becomes fleshed out enough that everybody kind of has a moment of like, even though like that place isn't real, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Ed Hopper, the painter, does typically like painted the American like Northeast and stuff like that. But his paintings themselves like are so non-specific, specific, that even though I haven't really seen that specific gas station he's painted in that shot, like I've been there, I've seen that spot, like, and so and that's always kind of a geeky thing to me too, like again, like I've not been there, but I've been there. And so like when I was a kid and I'd be like in the car and my mom would be driving to whatever like plant nursery we were going to, but I would pass a power lines and a power station or something, I'd be like, that looks like where Megatron and Optimus Prime fought, you know? And it'd be like,
sure, no, I get that. But I think probably the most fleshed out fictional city for DC would have, other than Metropolis and Gotham, would have to be Central City.
Yeah,
right. I think Central City is a fairly big character in the comics and has been since the beginning, at least for I guess probably since the '60s with Barry Allen. Is the fact that Central City that's the home of the Flash,
right? And
it's one of those cities that. Yeah, we get Superboy was stationed in Smallville and then went on to Metropolis and they celebrate Superman there. But I always felt like the idea of, I mean, there's that, as you were talking earlier, the line in the JLA Avengers bit where Quicksilver is amazed that they have a museum for speedsters.
Right.
Like, I don't know anywhere else in the DCU that celebrates their hometown quote hero like Central City does. Like everyone knows that's the home of the Flash, right? And even more so, I think, since they did the Grant Gustin show that's on the CW, I think, again, it's one of those things where, no, that idea of this is where the Flash is, and the Flash protects Central City, and, like, basically, I know, granted, if you go to Gotham, you're going to have to deal with Batman. If you go to Metropolis, you're going to have to do Superman. But since he is out in the daylight so much more than, like, say, Batman, obviously, and then it's one of those things where I just feel like Central City does a better job of saying, yeah, we have a superhero here.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even
especially like in the Wally stuff where he was like he got like a check from the city.
Yeah.
Right. And he was like professional superhero for that town.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
But I agree. I think Central City, but Central City's also had the one that has like housed like the Spirit was in Central City. also.
Well, and yeah,
when he got adopted by DC or not adopted, but you know what I mean. When DC got the rights.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have the same name, but I don't really believe there's. I think there might be a Flash story with the character that's Midnight, which is supposed to basically be their version of the Spirit at one point. Mm. But other than that, I don't think they ever like flesh out the idea that the Spirit was here at one point and now we have the Flash.
Okay,
I could be wrong.
There's no sense of legacy with the city.
No, not really.
It's not like with Metropolis and the first Green Lantern.
With
no, it's Gotham.
Gotham is Alan Scott.
Alan Scott. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he was stationed in Gotham. But yeah, it's not, as far as I know, there's not really one. But I think they just happen to share the same city, whatever reason. So, but I think of all of them, I think that even when they try to establish a city that's like another one that was pretty stylized. What's the city that's in Aztec that Morrison and Miller did?
Oh God,
I remember. Because that was supposed to be.
What's it again?
Aztec, the Ultimate Man. They would only ran like 12 issues, but it was Morrison and Miller, right?
Yeah, Mark Miller.
That they did together. It was the Aztec who eventually joins the Justice League.
I can't even begin to.
I can't remember the name of the city though, but it was one of the things. It was basically a one of those areas where weird stuff happened, and there was a reason why. You find out later on there's a reason why he's there, and then I was trying to think of the other place. The other place I was thinking of is. I knew in the 80s, in the early 80s, like 84, 85, when Blue Devil was out, that's another one because of the fact that he was, a stuntman in the movies. It was definitely not on the, it's not the East Coast for once. Right. They're doing more stuff that's supposed to be on the West Coast. That's where he lived and where he worked. So therefore, it was more of a California bent.
I mean, do you think it helps to have a strong visual style to convey I think feeling like a real place?
I think it's one of those things where it depends on your book. I think it depends what you're trying to do. If you're
like for example, Riverdale, something like that. Yeah, that type of feeling or that.
That show does a good job with it, though. I think that show does a really good job with it, actually.
Yeah, but that's I guess the use of a fictional city that empowers the characters. But it's at the same time, does it feel like a
small town?
Yeah.
There's only like 2 locations in Riverdale. And usually it's maybe 3. There's there's the malt shop.
Yes.
Pops. And then there's the school sometimes. It's that one hallway they use. And then Cheryl Blossom's mansion. I feel like those 3 places are always in Riverdale.
Right. Is Cheryl Blossom's mansion or Veronica's mansion?
But I feel like
Cheryl's.
Veronica lives in a penthouse or something.
Yeah. I feel like that show does a fictional city better and feels more lived in than like Friends does for New York.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. They do a very good job on their Sabrina show too, because the Sabrina show does feel like an authentic town to me. It's got like a little comic shop / like malt shop kind of thing. It's I can think of like a fair number of locations from that. It's got like a coal mine that people work in. Like it feels like
it does.
Like an Appalachian town to me.
Okay. Well, my thing is as much as we talk about Marvel using New York as the backdrop for most of their stuff in the early 80s or mid 80s when you had like say the West Coast Avengers or Wonder Man. Wonder Man was supposed to be set in LA. Mm-hmm. I never felt like there was anywhere near the amount of care or detail put into West Coast Avengers that there was in the books that were supposed to be set in New York. It just sort of like was like, oh yeah, we're sending this Avengers team with Hawkeye and the rest of these characters that we're sending over there to be in this group, but it never ever really felt like it was actually as fleshed out. Like I didn't feel like whoever was working on it had been to LA or been to Southern California or Northern California.
They were just taking a guess from their East Coast.
Yeah, right, exactly. They were guessing on what it was like out there. Same thing for other than the fact that you had Alpha Flight in Canada, there was no there was
in the forest.
Yeah, almost. Right. Yeah, I mean they fight Tundra or whatever in the first issue, and then it's like they're doing stuff all over Canada, but it never felt like it was Canadian specific, I guess, enough to make me realize, well, this is Alberta or Calgary or whatever, wherever the heck they are for the story.
Similar to Excalibur around the same time being set on the coast of England where they lived in a lighthouse. And Excalibur was my favorite comic book of that time when I was first getting into X-Men stuff. I loved it. But it was just a lighthouse on a coast and it was supposed to be England. And occasionally they would go into London and I think Alan Davis was the artist, especially on the early stuff. So he knows London. He knows London.
Yes, I love
and the London stuff looked nice. But other than that, they're just on a coast of England somewhere.
Right.
And then you'd run into it with Moira McTaggart being on Muir Island, which is off the coast of Scotland somewhere. And,
right.
And not really pinned down. And it was good enough,
right.
I guess.
But I mean, okay, here's a question for you. So when we have something like, say, Kurok come up, or Bialia, or what's the one for Black Adam? What's the...
Kondak?
Yeah. I think it's important to have, like, DC doesn't obviously say, well, it's in Iraq or it's in Iran, or they don't do that sometimes when they need a fictional city to stand in for another city. And I think it's one of those things where, from a standpoint of, if you're setting up a villain in a fake country, you can do a lot more with it than, again, there's not the implication of,
like Doomstadt.
Yeah.
Or Latveria.
Which is what Marvel does too.
Yeah.
Right. I think you can basically, it leaves you with more wiggle room. You can always argue, well, it's not really supposed to be this particular country if it's fictional.
It's not Latvia.
Right.
It's Latveria.
It's Latveria. Right. Get it straight. Don't confuse the two. So I think it's one of those things where I think sometimes it's advantageous to have that as opposed to, like, I mean, granted, we had like similar situation with like the Red Rockets out of Russia.
Right.
That was a big thing with the Green Lantern Corps right around the time of Crisis, and right after with the Giffen DeMatteis Justice League, where you had one of them join. It was one of those things where they were Russia, or you had, like, what's the group that's with I'm trying to think of the other Russian heroes in Marvel. Is it not the October Guard? That's G.I. Joe. What's the one I'm thinking of?
State it again. I'm sorry.
The one with the Titanium Man and with Dark Star, and it's a group of Russian heroes that's in Marvel, but they're clearly Russian heroes. But again, their stories could take place anywhere where it's cold. It looks like, because what I mean. Yeah. It doesn't, unless they're in with a backdrop of something that you would recognize as like Red Square or something. You really wouldn't know.
You're talking about Ursa Major or whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, I think some writers and some artists do a little bit more research than others. I remember, like, Mark Waid at one point, like, he was doing a story of Daredevil in like San Francisco, and he called up a friend of his and he's like, okay, like, I'm doing a Daredevil thing in San Francisco. Like, what, given his powers, like, what is it in that town that would kind of give you trouble? And he's like, well, the cable cars and the wires and all that stuff. And he was like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah,
Right.
it'd be tough to swing with those and throw your radar off. So I do think that that's neat. Yeah, I mean, because we have encountered a lot of those that, like, Alpha Flight is so perfect where it's just like, here it is, it's Canada.
Yeah,
like,
right.
maybe we've been there.
Because you're telling me it's right, but that's what I'm saying, is because you're telling me it's Canada. I'm like, well, okay, it's Canada, but not that I expect there to be like a...
Yeah, I've been to Niagara Falls, but I assume Saskatchewan's like this.
Sure. They're all, it's the whole thing is like this. So, I mean, it's one of the things where it's not, I'm not saying anyone was lazy, because, again, but I think now more than ever, to do the research, it's a matter of, you can basically go online and do much more of looking at what a place would actually look like.
Can Google Earth it.
Yeah, than you ever could before.
Yeah,
I remember Alan Moore, I read, talking about when he wrote Swamp Thing, when he was first on Swamp Thing, and he was still, I think, based in England and writing a book set in Louisiana, and just says, like, what he would do is he would got a hold of a Louisiana phone book and just started going through to see what do Louisiana names look like.
Wow.
And then came up with like Hattie Duplantis. That sounds like a very nice Louisiana name that he could use. And and now it's much easier than that. You can just go online and find whole sorts of historical records.
Yeah.
I think, though, like, so a positive to using a real city is opening it up to, like, disaster movies and stuff like that, right? Like, spoiler alert for Planet of the Apes, the ending of Planet of the Apes doesn't work with a fictional city. Doesn't work as well, I think, And I'm thinking about, like, so Independence Day was a big movie for me when I was a kid, because that was the perfect age for that. But, like, that trailer of, like, here's the Empire State Building, it's blowing up, and here's the White House, and it's blowing up. It's, you know what I mean? That has, like, a more visceral effect than just some made up landmark or made up building, right? Like, those things don't work. And I think also, like, comic wise, the Commandy cover to Commandy #1, like, you don't get that with Gotham, right? Maybe you get it with Metropolis. I don't know, but I'm pretty firm that Statue of Liberty is, like, it's an important detail of, like, this is the world that we're in now, for this.
Yeah, it's a very quick shorthand. Yeah. So, like, you look at one image and you're now exactly where that story wants you to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes a big difference when depending on what story you're telling. I'll put it this way: if you saw a cover with the Daily Planet in rubble and then the globe broken apart, would you have the same reaction as saying the Statue of Liberty?
Right. So that's what I say. So like maybe, but I really don't think so. Right.
Okay.
Because the Statue of Liberty is at least something I've seen.
Right.
Right. You know, and I think that has a different reaction. But if there was anything that would be close, I think it would be the Daily Planet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But yeah, what I want to underscore though is I think that like in order for a fictional city to work, I think the visuals is super important.
Right.
Right. So I may be alone on this, but I think Gotham and Metropolis feel so much more real and like actual places in Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series than they do in Justice League. Right. So in Justice League, I remember reading some interviews with Bruce Timm where he was saying because we were dealing with so many heroes and so many bigger threats and everything that they wanted, that it was so over the top and everything that to ground it, they wanted to get rid of the Art Deco-y look for things and kind of ground it in more of a real looking city. And I think the result for me, at least initially, is that like the cities look more bland and it's harder to tell where we are. And I guess maybe later on in the show, there were some little tells that I think that they started playing with, where when we saw like red skies, we knew we were in Gotham.
I was going to say that.
Right.
You know.
Or we saw blue skies, we knew, like, okay, we're probably in Metropolis over here. But so, I mean, do you guys have an opinion on that?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, like, the DCU Online game has a very big distinction, the fact that no matter whenever you travel to Metropolis, it's daytime. And no matter whenever you travel to Gotham, it's nighttime.
Right.
To make the distinction between the two, and it's a very easily tell. But I agree with you when they were doing when they started to do the Just League and Just League Unlimited. If we happen to go, like they happen to visit Gotham for any reason, the easy shorthand was, well, there's red skies,
right? Which
would have coincided with the last seasons of that show.
So I remember you and I were watching like one of the roulette episodes together, and it was and they went to like a location that had red skies, and I went like, ooh, and you had seen it before I did. And I said, oh, are we in Gotham? And you were like, wait. And then we get like that panoramic that's got like the Nightwing Easter egg. And I'm like, oh, we're in Bloodhaven, which is another one that we haven't brought up, because I do think in a specific run, but I think Dixon and McDaniel do a really good job of making Bloodhaven feel like a real place that is kind of like Gotham, but also has its own identity from Gotham, because it's like a shipping and whaling town, and it's dirtier and more corrupt.
Right.
The other one was Burnside. I thought just a recent addition. Like I in a really short amount of time, I think they really fleshed out Burnside.
Yeah, Burnside for me caught on really quick, and I was surprised at how quickly it was something that people were like, oh yeah, Burnside, absolutely, with Batgirl.
Okay.
Yeah, with the Batgirl of Burnside, and it was one of the things where
it's a neighborhood inside of Gotham City, not a separate city. So I think it's loosely inspired by like Williamsburg, Brooklyn, like of the time it was written, where it became like a trendy, young, hip neighborhood. And I think that's kind of what they were going for with Burnside.
Batwoman does a lot in Burnside, and I think that they get the visual wrong for that, because there doesn't appear to be any distinct difference.
Gotcha.
Between Gotham proper and Burnside, which Burnside for me was always Brooklyn.
It's like right across the river from the city central.
But see, the thing for me, like you and I talked about at the time, was the fact that I liked those books, that the Batgirl Burnside stuff. I enjoyed them, but at the same time, I felt like the threat level was like Riverdale. Like there never was any kind of like real consequences. Like it never felt like the story. I mean, it would just be from a story standpoint. I always felt like the stories, again, if it's part of Gotham, that doesn't mean that it should always be like Killer Moth. Or, Calendar Man. She's granted, she didn't, but I'm just saying the level of it was not, you didn't have all these Batman characters show up, even though it's supposed to be part of Gotham.
Right.
So it's one of the things where I get the distinction, the idea that they did a really good job in a short amount of time of doing the heavy lifting of, here's this, this pocket or this borough or whatever you want to call it for the city. And now Batgirl was there, but they've already gotten past that. So. Right.
The funny thing too, because you were saying like in the video game, really, I'm just thinking back, because you were like, every time you're in Metropolis, it's daytime, and every time you see Gotham, it's nighttime. And it is true, like nobody really draws Gotham during the day or anything like that. But one of my favorite instances of that is, I think, in Hush. There's an issue where Batman goes to Metropolis, and I think there's even in his thought box is like, it's so bright here, like even at night, like it's set at night, and it's just that it's such a brightly lit city, like you're in Times Square, where he's like, I can't hide anywhere.
Right.
Well, they emphasize that in the cartoons too. When discussed, they were saying that they use dark paper to do Gotham. to get that foreboding, dark feeling. Even if it happened during the day, it still felt dark.
Yeah.
While Metropolis, it's rarely that you saw Superman do anything at night, if at all. So, yeah, I guess the sunniness and the darkness is a part of the city as well, regardless of the time frame.
Yeah, being so used to that imagery that they use all the time of like bright, sunny Metropolis and dark, gloomy Gotham, like those few instances where they have put it as a twin city. Like I just have the funny image of my mind of it being like dark and cloudy on one side of the river and like bright and sunny on the other side of the river.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's there's like I think I saw some art for like a movie that didn't get made, like an animated movie that did Gotham and Metropolis as like the Twin City thing, and it is actually neat to see the stark distinction over there. It's fun. I just think that I think it's problematic having them so close, but it's a fun idea. I'm happy it hasn't stuck.
No, I mean, it's to me, it's like when you see Two-Face's room, like
right.
you know, this stark difference between the two, and I think there's been enough of the idea that, you know, just through imagery alone, there was a World's Finest miniseries. I think Steve Rude does the covers. I'm not sure if he does the interiors.
He does.
Okay, so he does the interiors too. But in that one, you definitely see, like, that one to me was like a really stark difference between, you know, what makes up Superman's like city and Rogues Gallery versus what Batman's Rogues Gallery and, you know, all that stuff is all about. That one in particular definitely shows the stark, you know, because you've got like these. It's also the colors choices. Like there's a lot of like bright yellows and oranges and stuff used in the Superman stuff, where the Batman stuff is just like the grays and the blues and you know, darker colors. That one, if you really want to see a good stark contrast between the two cities, is a really good miniseries for that.
Okay. No, I remember that. That was back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But one thing I want to say about the fictional city versus the realistic cities, time frames.
Mm-hmm.
Fictional cities, the same distance is stretched so many times. In one book, they might take a jet to go there, while another one they'll take a car or a motorcycle and still get there within the time frame, as opposed to using realistic cities in which I guess Daredevil is seen as a street level character. There's no way he's, you know, swinging or running 4 blocks or, you know, coming coming into that alone. So that needs to be addressed too. The fictional cities, oh my God, they can traverse a whole city in minutes or hours, depending on what they need to do or what occurs.
I remember hearing somebody online talking about like they had never been to New York before, and they were a huge Batman fan, huge encyclopedic knowledge of Batman, and they had never gone to New York before. And then when they went there, they were like, "Oh man, the Batmobile's bullshit. like that doesn't work at all." Like, and it suddenly made sense of Morrison's flying Batmobile. Like, yeah, you would need that.
Absolutely.
Here.
You'd just be stuck in Midtown for 3 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah.
With cab drivers yelling at you the whole time.
Right.
Everybody honking.
Yeah.
Like another issue that I can think of that real cities run into that the fictional cities don't, and I'm going to bring up Hell's Kitchen because Tommy just brought it up, is one where things change in the real world.
Yeah.
And Hell's Kitchen, when those stories were written in the 70s, I think Daredevil was first. I think he was in Hell's Kitchen as early as the 60s, but the Frank Miller stories are what I really think of. Like Hell's Kitchen in the 70s is not the Hell's Kitchen that it is today.
Right.
The Netflix shows do a pretty good job of like sort of creating a fictional version of that 70s Hell's Kitchen in modern day, but like Hell's Kitchen is not what it was.
Yeah.
Like in the 70s, Times Square was bad. Hell's Kitchen was worse. Now Times Square is like an amusement park.
Yeah, it's like owned by Disney practically now.
and Hell's Kitchen is like the like ritzy place right next door.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's 100% true. Yeah. Like, again, I had relatives in New York, and I remember like in the 80s, like being kind of scared when we would go up there.
Yeah.
Because like New York at the time was like falling apart in the 70s and stuff like that. Yeah. And now, like, you know, you go up for New York Comic Con and you're out 3 a.m. and you're not nervous.
Right, and New York Comic Con is in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like you walk through it from the subway to the convention center.
Wow.
That is a problem. Or I won't say it's a problem. It's just something. It's just an issue that happens with real world settings, is that the world changes. And so those stories become a little dated unless you put a little fictional magic in there. And that does not happen with like Gotham, which can always be whatever you artistically direct it to be.
Yeah. It's always perpetually
messed up.
A bad city that
it's on the brink.
It's
always on the brink.
It's on the brink.
Yes.
I always thought, though, like going back to the Justice League thing, in the cartoon, the thing that always got, like, I remember thinking about it that I kind of wish that Justice League was used as sort of like the bridge between animated series and Batman Beyond. So if like you just saw kind of a glimpse of Gotham and Justice League is sort of like the city that we kind of see in Batman Beyond, I just thought that would be like a more interesting thing. And I do think, reading some of the interviews with them, I do think that they kind of like lamented taking the stylistic choice that they did and kind of making it so generic.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting that they, that I'd never read that article. I'd never heard that before. I mean, obviously you can tell the difference between the stylized. I mean, they're highly stylized, obviously, in Batman the Animated Series, and it's a little less so as the further they go out. I mean, Superman. I mean, it has its own style from Metropolis and everything, but it's still an iteration of the style that they started with Batman the Animated Series. That I don't think. Not that I'm saying that, obviously, I'm not speaking badly about the series or saying there wasn't the same care and attention put into it. But I think what I remember hearing about it was at one point when they were doing or trying to do all these various shows, they just got stretched thinner and thinner, right? That they were trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
That they were trying to do so much that they basically like, well, we need a shorter version of this, or we need a shorter hander of this. But I feel like with Justice League, there is a fair amount of variety of settings, because you do have, like, I'm thinking of the opener for it might be Unlimited, the season where Green Arrow joins. It takes place early. It grounds him in fighting guys in a grocery store. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then to give you the idea of like, no, he's fights for the little guy. He's not a guy that's normally firing boxing glove arrows in outer space. Right. And then he's in outer space right after that. The next scene is where they want him to, they basically invite him to join, and it's kind of a, I'm a street level hero, why would I do this? Right. Kind of story. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't mean to sound like the development was lacking in some way. I mean, there are some absolutely beautiful, beautiful looking designs in the backgrounds and the locations that they're at. I mean, my thing was just when you're in an urban setting in that show, it can be a little, where are we? And they didn't do the thing that like Young Justice does, where we get the like we're in, the time, whatever. Yeah, we're in the timestamp. Yeah, Happy Harbor. They didn't do the Law and Order bit. No. Yeah, exactly. Dun, dun. Exactly. So my dog knows where we are. Right. Yeah. Right. But yeah, that was my thing, was just the idea that in some instances, in some cases, it was, as much as they might want to lament or beat themselves up over the fact, I still feel like there were times where, like, say for when they were in, when they saw with all the stuff with Deadman, and they had to, they basically create Nanda Parbat out of whole cloth. Yeah. And that's pretty much, outside of the comics, I'd probably say the first time we've ever seen Nanda Parbat. Yeah. Illustrated or in something else, because it's not like there's Deadman stuff in video games, not Deadman stuff, and they use it in Arrow at one point. Yeah, and obviously, I mean, going with fictional places, like if we're going to go beyond cities, it opens the door for other like the Savage Land and stuff. Right, what I mean? Sure, Yeah. Which are all really cool ideas.
Atlantis in both Marvel and DC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the future of the Legion, the future of the Guardians of the Galaxy, any other planet generally. Again, I agree with the idea that it's difficult to have, I just think it just got difficult for them to keep up with the production of it all. Yeah, no, I mean that could very well be. I don't remember. I mean, my sense was that Justice League was kind of not done at the same time of all these other shows, but I don't quite remember, but I thought they were doing like Batman, Superman, and like pre-production on Batman Beyond at the same time. Yeah, they were. It might have been, which is crazy. I don't know how. That's what I'm saying. That's the way I remember. Is like they were either an overlap, and they thought they were going to not get a season of a final season of something, and then something got tacked on, and then all of a sudden they had pre-production on one and wrapping up on something else, and then trying to come up, I thought, with ideas for something else. Right.
But those are seriously next to each other, all 4 shows.
Yeah, it's a wonder that they were so good. I mean, to walk into the office, I'm assuming, and not know what show you're working on that day. Like,
yeah, but you could tell some episodes suffered just on what they dealt with, like whether it's the villain. I'm sorry, this is a tangent, but whether the villain, whatever, it just sort of got thinner as the seasons went on.
I mean, so what about? Is there any piece of media that you could think of that took place in a real spot that you wish was in a fictional city that you thought it would work better, or vice versa?
That's kind of hard to
it's hard on the spot.
No, it is, but I can see why you would ask that question. It just begs the question of if the environment would have worked better in a real setting.
Like, would gargoyles work better if it was a fictional city?
No,
do you think?
No.
Okay.
No, that's a great example.
Yeah, that is actually.
but that's based on historical events. A lot of it just is twisted ever so slightly in order to garner a better character development. But no, it being a New York show, it gave a sense of time as opposed to them being in Scotland. But to me, it was weird because they're basically immigrants, correct?
Yeah. Yes, they are.
Yeah, but we get the indication that Scotland isn't good enough of that time, so they went to New York to live their life. That's what it seems like. It's like,
well,
they got kidnapped.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. Yeah, right.
Built a castle on top of a skyscraper.
But you could have done it in Scotland. I mean, that's all I say. That I mean, I've never been to Scotland. Scotland doesn't have skyscrapers. I
don't think so. They got cities like Edinburgh, but I assume
those cities are so old that. But you can't. Oh well, London's got a ton of skyscrapers.
Yeah, but that's my point. Scotland is Scotland that old?
But I think with that specific example, I think
that's a good example.
But I think that honestly, having it be not necessarily a Gothic. It's not Gothic New York. It's necessarily, but there's Gothic architecture obviously in New York that lends itself to the idea of, well, where are we going to put gargoyles?
Yeah,
and
it's true. It is a very non-specific New York, too,
right?
Where like I feel like. Aside from their names, which hit me when I said it, we don't get the character names if it's not in New York, but it's like, but I can't. I'm hard pressed to think of like a specific location that they use at any point. I mean, maybe there's like a Rockefeller Center bit
Statue of Liberty.
One point. Is it possibly? All right, it's been so long.
I know.
It's a great series. I can't wait for it to come back on Disney Plus. By the way, though.
Yes.
But,
Clifton, when you were in New York, is there a clock tower in New York? Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure there's clock towers in New York. I can't remember them off the top of my head.
But they do go to what's it called Central Park.
Central Park is in New York.
Yeah, but there's certain elements of New York that are glaring, while others are just subtle.
Yeah, he meets the Illuminati guy in Central Park. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. It's a good episode.
Yeah, it is. But they kind of play with New York to their leisure. They're, like, again, the clock tower is something fake, while Central Park is something very specific. Yeah.
I mean, and there's kind of like going off in another direction. I think that there's like almost a subcategory of like real places in the future. And I don't mean like Command Planet of the Apes, but I'm talking like Blade Runner, where that's Los Angeles, very real place and everything, but it's like it's so unrecognizable, and in a good way, in a fantastic way. Like I think Blade Runner does a better job of making that Los Angeles feel like a real place than some like romantic comedies I've seen that take place in LA.
I'm still,
but again, like super strong visual, I think, which I think.
It was highly stylized. Absolutely, I think I think definitely, you can argue the fact that it inspired definitely a movement towards a lot of that, that sort of look for a future. Yeah, but I mean, like for example, if you're looking at future cities, like let's just say again, it's a fictional city, or Hill Valley. In Back to the Future. Yeah. Obviously, we don't. What was supposed to be 2015 is not what we got in 2015.
Oh no.
Right.
So we're not. I mean, if we're looking at fictional cities, you got me thinking about that. Tommy was saying when you said clock tower. It's like, ooh, right. That's a oh yes, of course, the clock tower. Say the clock tower. But then again, it's not something that when you look at a fictional city of and it might have just been played for laughs. It might have just been extrapolated out what they thought we might have by 2015, but obviously we don't.
Oh my.
And we still have people that are wanting hoverboards and lace up shoes that you don't have to touch, and all that stuff. So I think it's one of those things where other fictional future cities are more influential than others, obviously.
Yeah.
No, I laugh at the fact there's no cell phones. That's what makes me laugh.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
Just went with a whole different direction with that technology. That's all I thought.
Cell phone, that was like a weird thing where like almost nobody like nobody predicted it in a weird way outside of Star Trek. Like, you know what I mean? Like Star Trek
with the flip phone.
With the flip phone in the 60s. But
and I feel that we just went in a different direction with the technology. I think we could have got those shoes. We could have got that hoverboard if we weren't focused on phones.
Right.
That's what I feel.
Maybe they're still coming.
Maybe.
Not that far removed.
No.
It's just, are there sports almanacs? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
Wikipedia.
the only real thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Oh my God, that is true.
Yes.
You can see every score going back to God knows what time.
And they'll mention the internet. That's another one.
They do not mention the internet.
They do not mention the internet at all. I mean, they sort of have, I guess, I guess as close as you get is what the stuff in the house, the TV screens.
The big screens?
Yeah, where you can get.
No, that's spot on. Yeah.
Where you get the information that
Michael
way.
J. Fox talks to Flea over his fireplace.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We're missing like it just hit me, like we're missing a really, really big fictional town.
Okay.
Springfield.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, has the benefit of being fleshed out over 30 odd seasons.
Right. Definitely.
You know.
Yeah.
In Shelbyville.
Yeah. Shelbyville.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes. North Haverbrook and Ogdenville. And, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right.
Capital City from the early ones.
Capital City. Yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good one. We should have thought about that one for sure.
I feel like it has the Gotham situation where sometimes you can just drive into a desert like 30 minutes away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes you're in a swamp.
Right. It gets all kinds of weather.
Yeah.
You know, weather happens whenever they need weather to be, 3 feet of snow or whether they need it to be scorching hot.
I love that.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Like it's like bits of Atlantic City and, and bits of Atlanta and bits of,
But over the years, like you think about the opening and it's become more of a small tour of the city. Like, the tire fire and the power plant and the
Quickie Mart.
The Quickie Mart and the Bolorama and what's another good land? Moe's Tavern.
Sure.
You get a lot of those landmarks in the opener, and that those are the school. I mean, those are all places where they are in Springfield. Of granted, I'm sure someone has all atlased it out and laid it all out as a city, but that's definitely one that benefits from being fictional for sure. Especially when they put a dome over it in the movie.
Oh, really? I've never seen the movie.
You've never seen the movie?
I've never seen the movie.
Wow.
No.
Yeah, I dragged you that time to see in the theater.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah.
You're like, no, I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
And it was
example.
And it was better than
I thought it was.
Yeah, but that's a good one that when they dome it, I don't know if you could. Granted, there was that CBS show about the dome.
Under the Dome.
Under the Dome.
Brian K. Vaughan was showrunner of that.
Yeah.
Was he really?
He was.
Oh.
He's doing all right.
Yeah, he'll be okay. He'll be okay if he ever gets back to Saga. But
that's funny because they didn't use that for Futurama. He goes with New York, and then he just doesn't look back on creating a fictional part of that. He just used some aspects of New York, but there's nothing close to what he did with Springfield and create a 100% fictional town.
Yeah, yeah. Springfield's a good one. Didn't think about Springfield.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I may be wrong about because I don't think that's the case for Ferris Bueller. But then some of the John Hughes movies, all kind of take place at a fictional Sherman, Illinois, or something like that. Wasn't that the Symbiotic Titan thing where it takes place in Sherman, Illinois?
Yeah. Shermer?
Are you looking it up?
I am looking it up. I believe Symbiotic Titan was Sherman, Illinois, and I think that was their play on Shermer.
Is Shermer, Illinois a real place? Weird Science and 16 Candles are set in the same fictional town of Shermer, Illinois. Wow, okay.
So both Shermer and Sherman, which I believe was Symbiotic Titan, are fictional.
Well, that's the same thing as with Stranger Things. Does it take to the fact that it takes place in
Hawkins, Indiana?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Does it benefit from the fact that it's not? I mean, it's not a real place.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a place that feels like it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
In that time period.
Yes.
And
for sure.
And I honestly would never know if there was a Hawkins, Indiana or not, realistically.
Right. I do think that having Hawkins, Indiana, since they have done such a good job of making it feel like it could be a genuine place, that it benefits for that. I am interested to see what they're going to do with the next season, where they're saying that they're not in Hawkins for the next one. Where
Really?
they had
Well, we're all caught up, right?
No.
I am. Oh, okay.
well,
Ooh, that was a close
so
one.
no.
yeah.
That was a close one, Frank.
So, but again, getting back to it, I think they've done a fairly good job with that, and I think it feels generic enough and timeless enough that you could basically, like you said, I definitely feel like living through that time. I feel like, oh yeah, I could. This could have been the small town that I lived in. That would be no problem. I could totally identify with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real strength of that show too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it could easily, I think, have worked in a real place, but I think there is some flexibility of, the weird. I forget the name of the company, but like, I'm going to say Cadmus for lack of a better, but the weird like Cadmus like science spot. And
Aren't they just the Department of Energy? Or at least that's their front.
That's their front.
is it? Okay.
It's the Department of
That
Energy.
explains why I didn't remember it. Okay, so it's a real name. Interesting that it is that they went with real there.
Yes.
But
I think they never quite explain if it's just they're using the Department of Energy as a front or if they are actually Department of Energy. I don't
Right.
think they explain that. But I think it could go either way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it for fictional cities versus real cities. My vote is it depends. It depends on what you want to do.
Sure.
Strengths, weaknesses.
Yeah.
Right.
They got them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both are good.
Yes.
Both are good. But, okay, so I thought it'd be fun. So to sign off really quick, what's everybody's favorite fictional landmark that would be world famous if it was real?
I got to start off.
Yeah, please.
Themyscira.
Okay.
Can you imagine a place where the whole area is filled with Amazons that are timeless? Like, it seems to me they grow up and stay perpetually between the ages of 20 and 40, in which they're at the physical peak of their life. They're all physically gorgeous. And all you as a man, that would be
Well,
your life.
They work out all the time.
All the time.
All they do is train for war.
All they change for war.
That's all they do.
But you gotta think.
Right.
All you gotta catch one slip just once, and that's a hell of a relationship.
Right.
True, you could die
Right.
if you touch that soil. But the mere idea of going there and just possibly living your life with an Amazon.
Right. You have to find it accidentally, though.
Yeah, you got to
Right,
drop
like-
out of
like
the
Steve
sky.
Trevor,
Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta-
Be near death.
Yes.
And nurse back to health.
Well, it also helps to be, to be incredible. Like Steve Travers would be like an incredibly good-looking guy and a fighter pilot, and all that stuff.
Hey, that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
but even with all that, look what he got.
Has anyone ever done a story of Steve and Hal knowing each other? Has anybody ever connected them? I'm just trying to think.
No, I know
No.
that during when Wade did J. Layer 1, he does a story where Hal and Larry Traynor from the Doom Patrol know each other.
That's
Which
great.
one's Larry Traynor?
Larry Traynor's Negative Man.
Yeah.
Oh, really? No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a
Interesting.
little bit about the fact that they're both, because it's, the 60s and everyone was a test pilot.
Yeah.
I like, Larry Traynor and Hal Jordan. I'm sure Ben Grimm all know each other if they were all in the same
Okay,
world,
right.
because, that's what they do is they flew experimental planes. So,
And Ace Morgan.
and Ace Morgan,
Yes,
sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, sorry to cut you out. It never dawned on me before. I'm like, oh wow, I don't know that anybody's ever done
I
that.
don't think there has been, but there should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one that's
That'd
if
be
you were,
cool.
If you were lacing all that stuff together, that would make sense.
Thank you, Frank. But
Yeah.
but that's my vote for most memorable at least.
Themyscira is
So are we
cool one.
doing-
And we didn't even talk about Themyscira, but yeah, that is.
So are we doing? Okay, my question is: are we doing landmarks, or are we doing places we would choose to live? If you had,
Whatever. No, okay, whatever.
'cause
What
if
do you wanna do?
If you, because my thing is, I think it'd be interesting to say if you had to live in one of the cities that we
Okay.
discussed,
Ugh.
right? Where would you choose to live? We've discussed this
That's
before.
Yeah, it's easy.
That's
Okay.
easy.
All right.
That's Metropolis.
No,
Okay.
I disagree.
See, it's not
Really?
easy.
Yes.
That's why.
Okay,
I brought,
why?
That's why I brought it up.
Let me say it.
Yeah. Why no to Metropolis?
I say Central City.
Okay.
His whole thing is speed. He will save you.
Yeah, but Superman's got that too.
Superman's got this sense.
I don't know.
He will
Like
save you.
I'd feel safe living in like that.
I would feel safer.
My sense, I feel like it's always Gotham, Metropolis, but my sense is Joker attacks in Gotham, people run away, right?
After.
Like that's just like what the citizens will do. Oh, like Joker's here, we're all gonna die. Let's get the hell out of here. But in Metropolis, like Toyman attacks. My sense is that like people run towards that because they want to get pictures, right? Because Superman's gonna be here in a minute.
Superman at one point is what he's caused. I mean, Batman is reactive. People die, then he saves the survivors. Superman, they always try to challenge him.
Sort of.
It's like,
but Batman's on patrol. Batman's on patrol. Superman's not on patrol. So I think Superman's reactive.
But here's what people do in Metropolis. They'll set a bomb elsewhere and then commit a crime just to see if they can break him or personally kill him or challenge him to kill a girl. Or always, it's like, never go to the Daily Planet if you want to live in Metropolis. But in Central City, all they want is money. They're not killers.
Right.
Well, my thing is with all that is generally Batman may be on patrol. I get it. But generally, it's, hey, look, the bat signal's out. I better go see what's up. And Batman happens to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of Gordon in the police department because he's Batman. And then in Metropolis, it's like, hey, why is that train, the elevated train, flying off the tracks? Because someone's doing something across town that Superman's got to deal with.
Right.
I would, again, choose, much like Tommy, I would choose Central City because generally the rogues are after money. Or they got some beef or something about revenge on the Flash. That doesn't mean they're going after anybody else.
No.
They're just going to go after the Flash.
Yes. It's revenge plots.
Okay.
And that's what I would, I would prefer. I mean, there's not a lot of Flash stories that center around the idea of, I'm going to destroy Central City. There's a couple, but there's not a lot.
Okay.
And I feel like,
I believe in Superman. He'll save me. He'll catch me.
Hitman 34.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I agree with you. Any of them would try.
And then I like to add, Flash stays at Central City. Superman patrols the world, if not the galaxy.
True.
Yeah, but
you
really
will
fast.
catch him, not in Metropolis.
We got Supergirl. We got Superboy.
Again, you're putting your trust in other people. Flash, you have Kid Flash, you have Impulse, you have the Flash himself. So again, Central City every time. The worst to me is Star City?
No, Coast City.
Coast City. Thank you.
Coast City is the worst.
Violated all the time.
Yeah, Coast City. He's never there.
Right, because Hal's always in space. That's one thing that's neglected with Hal is the fact that Coast City, I guess, I mean, I don't know, with Morrison stuff, it may be different. But I'm pretty sure he's out doing space cop stuff.
Yeah.
But if I were someone who's going to try to start a crime wave, I'm like packing all my stuff in a U-Haul and going to Coast City because the Green Lantern that's supposed to protect his hometown, he ain't there. He's never there.
No. Have we ever seen Abin Sur on Earth ever before he dies?
No.
Right? No, I can't think of one.
No. He's not one story. No, not at all.
Yeah.
He's too busy.
But okay, but as far as like landmark thing though, I think the Daily Planet would be a world famous. Like I could see in that universe tour guides taking you up to get pictures of the globe and
absolutely.
everything. And the other thing that made me when you said bat signal just made me think like what do you think the citizens' reaction is in Gotham when they see the bat signal?
Go home and lock
in today.
Go home and lock the door.
I think part of it, I would imagine that people in like everybody's social media in Gotham probably has a shot of the bat signal. I do imagine that it probably gets some excitement, but then it's like, get home.
Yeah, get off the streets.
The Mad Hatter is going to brainwash all of us.
But it's one of those, remember when you brought up Morrison earlier and we were talking about this, and you said that when Morrison, I remember reading about Morrison talking about Gotham and the idea that if you choose to live in Gotham City, you know full well what you're in for. Like you don't got to, I'm thinking about taking a job. Where is it? Gotham City. I don't know. I don't know if you should do it.
There's a design choice too that I thought of when I was in New York, because when you're walking the sidewalks in New York, you pass under like these scaffoldings like all the time, where like there's constant renovation. I remember thinking like Gotham would have this,
absolutely.
Like Two-Face blows up the Half Moon Lounge or something like that, and then you would be, there would be scaffolding.
It's like Two-Face broke out of jail. Don't be on Janus Street. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Don't be the
Everybody at the Second National Bank puts in their vacation days.
Calling out today. Don't be the Double Down Saloon. We're not going anywhere near that joint. No way. For me, if I had to choose a landmark, I would choose the Superman statue in Centennial Park.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's one of
Death of Superman, right?
Right. Yeah. It's after Death of Superman. It's him with the eagle. Mm-hmm. I think that's like a great landmark for Metropolis. I think it's one of my favorites. And again, to get back to the DCU Online game, a lot of times if you're doing like a raid or a bit, or you're like trying to team up with people, it's a landmark in the city itself where people meet up to like go on a mission.
Okay.
It's nice that they left it up after he came back from the dead.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I gotta go with Hall of Justice.
Yeah.
That's the landmark.
Cool. Yes.
People would flock to that.
Yes.
Yes.
You're right. 100% correct.
Yep. I agree with that.
Which city would you live in, though?
Which city would I live in?
Change the subject.
Where's Adam from? Ivy? Like, nothing ever happens up in Ivy City.
I mean, it's not so. I mean, no. Again, it's one of those things where you have like Kronos. There's like dinosaurs on the street every once in a while, or
That'd
you have
be fun.
or there's wild right, or there's wild plants because of the Floronic Man or something like that. But not really. Not much goes on. I mean, Gail Simone did a lot more with it when she brought in
Troy.
Ryan Choi. Yeah.
Wait up, dinosaurs are on the streets? Have you never seen Jurassic Park?
or
hard no.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that's not like Ivy Town is not going to have contagion. Like there's a death plague.
Oh no,
or there's not going to be no man's land. There's not going to be.
No, Gotham is number one. I think everyone can here agree that they'd never choose Gotham as their number one vacation spot.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
there's got to be some reason why people stay there, though.
Oh, there's money to be made.
I gotta figure.
Yeah, it's super rich.
I always imagine too, I think Deanie said this, and I really, really loved it. Like Gotham to him was like the Hollywood of crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It was the spot that if you were a criminal, that's where you wanted to go. Like I'm going to get myself a costume and a gimmick, and I'm going to make something of myself. And I really, really like that idea.
Mm-hmm. I think everyone still underestimates Batman. They just think they're stopping a dude with the Halloween costume. At the end of the day.
Yeah. That's true.
So yeah, I mean, would you rather go against?
They know he's good at everything.
Yeah, yes. But, I mean, given a choice for the DC heroes, I would test my mettle. Not knowing anything about Batman, I would think I could beat Batman over Superman, over the Flash, over Wonder Woman,
Batman's power,
over Green Lantern.
Batman's power is he can never lose a fight.
Yeah.
Unless you have a wrench.
I think. I think the one I would go up against is Green Arrow, because he's kind of a fuck up anyway, and I feel.
He'll miss.
Green Arrow. You don't think so?
Go read the Mike Grell stuff where he's in Seattle.
Oh my God, Longbow
Hunters. Okay. Yeah, go read that stuff.
Yeah, you gotta loan me that stuff.
Yeah, he's not a joke there.
Yeah, he does not use glove arrows.
Yeah, I just he's always been like a Batman, but without the polish.
No, you're right.
To me,
you're right.
Like if Batman is James Bond, Green Arrow's Indiana Jones.
Yeah, but do you want to fight Indiana Jones?
No.
I'll fight him over James Bond.
Dude can take a punch, and he's got a gun that sounds like a cannon.
And he's willing to do anything to win.
Yes. Like melt Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Bond can jump
really high
off of a dam and fly into the airplane and pull it up before it crashes.
He can lift like 30 pounds over his head.
He is fast.
Yes. He is.
No,
he can bait a hook.
Right. Exactly.
Seinfeld references.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So
anyway.
Do we have any other landmarks? Any other?
Yeah. Zach, did you say yours?
Yeah. Daily Planet Globe.
Well, that's right.
And Metropolis. Okay.
But where would you live?
Yeah, I'd still pick Metropolis.
Still pick Metropolis.
It sounds expensive, but I think I'd be safe.
All right.
Lots of job opportunities. In construction at the very least.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You'd have lots of work.
Every once in a while you can see a giant monkey.
Yeah.
Right.
With kryptonite eyes.
Right, yeah. It's like by far the most exciting town to be in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Bar none. Yeah.
Darkseid only invades every once in a while.
Sure. Absolutely.
Jeez, yes. Global takeovers every other month.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh no.
you die all of anywhere. Doesn't matter.
Mm.
Right? The answer in Marvel is just live in Pennsylvania.
Yes, that New York.
just don't live in New York.
Don't live in New York.
Yep.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania, Dutch country.
Yep. There you go. Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And don't forget to subscribe.